So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we have Rick Knights on. Now, Rick has been working with me within the 1% for the last couple of months now. By my account, absolutely smashing it and thriving. But as we were just chatting about offline, I think getting Rick on to talk about his experiences are going to be a real powerful conversation, because where Rick was and where he is today, I think is very common. And that's kind of like got all the trappings of a great life. Everything's great on paper, but I'm not really feeling my best. I don't feel like I'm showing up and can't always work out exactly what to do and why. And of course, I've got a business where someone can go through a process to do that. Parking that, though, I think there's lots of guys out there that feel like that sometimes. And it's important to say that actually, with some small changes, we can actually have some pretty big outsized results and ensure that we are happy and thriving within our lives. So it's going to be a great conversation. Before we jump off, Rick, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, a bit about you?
Yeah, of course. So thanks for having me on, Luke. My name's Rick Knight. I am approaching my 47th year on this earth. I'm a dad of three relatively young kids. So I've got a 6-year-old and twins who are 3. I run my own business. And I think it's important to say, because it all interlinked, it's important to say I've run my own business for just coming up for a year now. Before that, I was kind of climbing the corporate ladder. I'd set offices up and managed teams in technology recruitment, and was kind of on that kind of career trajectory. But yeah, took the plunge to set my own business up a year ago, and yeah, that's me as I am now.
Okay. Well, and with all of that, right? Dad of 3, twins, pretty spicy, as we've discussed. Amazing, but intense. Running and setting up your own business, that's also equally amazing, but equally stressful. You know, there's real highs with it and real lows, and I can relate as a business owner. So by all accounts, lots and lots going on. Let's then rewind a few months into the past. I think you'd followed and seen my bits online for a little bit, on LinkedIn anyway, Rick. You decided to reach out and have a conversation with me about, doing some work on yourself. What was going off back then that made you think, right, actually, maybe something's not quite working and I want to make some changes?
Yeah. So I think I'll definitely want to talk through that. I think it's important to just give a little bit of context prior to that.
Totally.
Kind of tease everything up. So when I was working for a kind of medium-sized recruitment business, and like I said before, I was kind of climbing the ladder there. I'd got to kind of regional director, managing teams of people up to about 30, 40 people. And I'd always had support in that role, but I was fortunate enough to work with a really, really good executive coach, but it was purely centered around work. So any kind of work things that I would take to her, we would talk through and solutionize, and that really, really helped me and really supported me. So I was kind of an advocate of coaching, if you like, in general. And when I set the business up 12 months ago, so if I rewind 12 months, I'd never really worked from home on a consistent basis. Most of what I've done has been office based. A young family, setting your own business up comes with a fair amount of weight on the shoulders. I've always in my life, I've always played sport. I've always been active, but I found myself going through huge peaks and troughs in that, like just hammering it and then burning out, and then doing nothing for 3 months, and then hammering it again and then burning out, and it that meant my mood was kind of fluctuating with those. With those kind of peaks and troughs in exercise.
Yeah.
And running your own business, as can be quite insular. In the same way, when you climb the corporate ladder, there's less and less people to talk to, which is why people like exec coaches exist. And everything I was doing was making me more insular and more kind of inward facing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there wasn't a single thing that I could say, "Do you know what? This is terrible. I'm having a terrible time." But the business has gone better than I could have ever expected in year one. Kids are all healthy. They're all doing really well. You know, my eldest is doing really, really well at school. Things are fine at nursery. They're training the backside for, you know, their entire lives, but they're doing really, really well. Relationship with the wife is fantastic, but something wasn't clicking, something wasn't right. And I think I even used the phrase to you when we met the first time. Um, I'm not depressed, and it was kind of like, you know, um, there was like a cloud hanging over me that I just couldn't seem to shift. You know, the mental load of being a father, being a business owner, and wanting to represent myself in all of those facets as the best I possibly could. And I definitely felt like at work I was, um, but in other areas I was kind of letting myself down.
Yeah, and what you're that not depressed, but that I think I've got that. It's probably on my website somewhere. I think actually as a quote. I think, and that's not to belittle where you're at, Rick, but it's a real common thing that I hear. And I think what you're pointing to there is there's no one specific area where it's just that's on fire. It's a multitude of probably little smouldering fires across the board where they're not quite where you want to be. You're not consistent with your health and fitness. You may be having a couple of drinks in the evening to take the edge off. Maybe not as present on your phone, as not as present because you're on your phone because you're stressed about work. And so the work bit's happening, but there's other bits happening. So all these other little areas where it's like there's no one area you can point to where it's exactly that.
Yeah,
And that's where it speaks to that. Well, I'm not actually depressed, but I'm not particularly happy or content, super content either. And for me, that's the rub because what, like I said to you, is like, well, it's pretty fucking low bar, though, isn't it? Not depressed, it's like other gents. It might be, well, it's not like I've got a divorce yet. It's like, right, what? Okay, is that where you want your relationship to be? Not divorced? I mean, it could be a lot better, and I think it's that recognition of that. But then on the flip side, it can also be hard to work out what and why it is that you need to do, right? Because if you recognize, well, okay, there's not one thing, but I'm not going to specifically address that one area. Well, then if it's lots of other things, what are they and where do I start and what does that look like? Something you mentioned about your previous exec coach, and exec coaches are amazing. In my experience, I'm doing some one-to-one with another client at the moment. He's come through the process and we're doing some one-to-one stuff in a corporate setting. And he mentioned with his coach, he said, it's great, but it's got to a point where it is all cerebral and it's all work. And actually, I believe you're missing a trick there because if you're only focusing on those areas, your life and you are more than those couple of pieces. And yes, there are things that we need to look at cerebrally, like your mindset and how you're framing things and how you're looking at situations and your interactions with others. And there's lots of work to do that. But equally, if you're drinking lots and overweight and stressed and not present at home and feeling like you're not showing up, the list goes on. Well, that's going to have a huge bearing on your ability to process and behave at work as well. And so for me, it's not that that's a panacea and you just do that stuff. You need to do all of it. But I think one needs to look at all of this holistically. And also the stage of life that we're at, and I say you're a little bit older than me, Rick, but not much, like business, young kids, wife, there's lots of moving parts. And we're kind of the fulcrum for that. And so I believe it's really important that we take care of ourselves within that to be able to be that better version across those other areas.
yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think the exec coaching that I had in the past was right for what the business, because ultimately they paid for it, what they wanted me to do, be better at work, be better at the
Yeah.
things they wanted me to do. They weren't looking at it from a holistic point of view to say, right, how can you be a better dad so that you are less stressed when you're working? How can you be a better husband so that um, you know you've got more resilience to be a better dad, a better, work harder, and all those sort of things. I think there's a couple of things that you mentioned in there. So I think like a lot of people during the pandemic, um, you know, that was my real first experience of working from home full time lockdown. And we had an 18-month-old baby. And so, the end of the day, I would crack a beer because that was like, it was like, you know, I think everybody was feeling the weight of that. And that was almost like a sign off of, okay, the working day's done. Now onto family life. And whilst I didn't continue doing that every day, there was a definite point of, God, today's been really tough. I'm going to crack a beer because, and I would almost find an excuse. Oh, well, there's a football match on. I'm going to have a couple of beers because I'm going to watch that. And changing that relationship with alcohol. Not that I have ever struggled with it in any way. Just changing the relationship and how I view it was something really, really, really important. Um, and for me, the coping mechanism was always feast or famine with exercise. I would exercise to the point of feeling brilliant, and then I'd be like, okay, well, I've done that now. That was always kind of that was my go-to. I would run, or I would play tennis, or whatever it was. I would go and do that, but it wasn't consistent. I didn't have habits. I would just do it because I knew I needed something, but I didn't know what it was. And that you pinpointed, there was nothing fundamentally wrong, but something wasn't right.
Yeah. And I think it's because I believe your mental state and mental well-being and sort of how you kind of show up is an emergent property of what you do or don't do every day, right? And so something I've been thinking about and conceptualizing a lot, going a bit off topic, but I think it's relevant, is this whole work-life balance concept, right? So how do you feel balanced? And I think we think about it as, well, it's time, isn't it? So like, oh, what I need to do is squeeze more time out so I can have a bit more time with the family, and then there's a time at work. And the reality is, because of how our lives are structured in the Western world and how things are, there's always going to be more actual time spent at work versus at home. So then how do you get balance? Surely it's impossible. I think that's where some people say, well, work-life balance is a load of bollocks. I don't think it is, because I think the balance, or the feeling of balance, is an emergent property of how you feel. And so if you're at work focused, doing what you need to do, you're not procrastinating, you're on it, you then got boundaries and structure in place so you can stop and park it. You walk through your office door, come in, and the twins are there being crazy, and and your wife's there, but you're present, not on your phone, listening, engaged. You will feel balanced, and that will feel like you've got the balance because you're in the right state relative to the situation that you're in. I think the balance feels out of whack when all that is all blurred. But not only that, you feel that balance and you're in that state that's predicated on what you're doing and not doing every day. And that's a multifaceted approach, be that exercise, what you put in your mouth, how you manage your stress, what you do and don't drink, how you frame things, how you view yourself. Like, all of those parts feed into that. And if we're ticking a fair few of those boxes consistently, in my experience, you show up as you want and you feel, quote unquote, balanced.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm working harder on myself. I'm working harder in my business, and on my relationships with my family and my friends than I've ever done. But I feel more balanced than I ever have, and it's not because I've kind of magicked more time. Although I'm sure we'll come on to the 5 a.m. club in
Yeah.
a minute. It's not that I've done that. It's that when I'm doing those things, I'm doing those things. There was funny enough, there was a moment this morning. So my one of the twins woke up a little bit earlier. I've just finished the workout. I had a shower and a cold shower, and then I was downstairs. She came downstairs, and I had 10 minutes alone with her, and we just played and had a chat and had a nice cuddle, and you know that moment gave me so much joy and so much happiness. And I think the difference is when you're sat and you're not present with your kids and you're on your phone, you don't get any joy out of that moment. There's nothing. It's not fun because you're
Yeah,
kind of half doing this, half watching them, just keeping them alive, basically.
yeah.
Right? It's like bare minimum levels. Um, Whereas now, making that separation of, right, this is the last thing I'm going to do for work, and then my phone goes somewhere else, or that's it. It's in the other room. It's on silent. Nobody's kind of, messing with this time. But we don't get enough time with our kids as it is. Even if you work from home full time, you don't have enough time with your children. Um, and that, making sure that you're present in that time, gives you more joy and gives you more balance. And that's been a massive shift for me.
That there, that little interaction you're describing this morning, for me, that's what your life is. It's not the big shiny things, the holidays, the success at work, and those things. By the way, they're all great, right? But the unique, fleeting, and fast, and often, as you know, you get the big bonus. You sign that big client. You work for yourself. It's like, yeah, great. And then after like 2 minutes, you're, oh, okay. But what most of your life is are those interactions with the people that are there all the time that you care about. It's how your wife greets you when you walk through the door or you greet her. It's how you interact with your child first thing in the morning when they've just woken up. And if that's striking that, go away on your phone, life isn't going to feel great because you're not there and present, and you're not, right? If you can make the most of those little moments, I think that's where life feels balanced because, like you said, you had utter joy from that. That and the gratitude you have remembering that is really powerful. Now, let's be transparent. Our life isn't just full of that all the time. We get things
Yeah,
wrong. We fuck up. We discussed that this week in one of the calls, Rick, right? Things happen and kids are stressful. They're not all sweetness and light, and they're triggering, and we react in ways which we wouldn't show ourselves in glory. But if we can try and make the most of those times and make more of those moments versus the less, and then when we do mess up and they're not the perfect moments, we course correct ourselves and recognize what we're doing. Again, you feel more balanced and present because you're intentional with what's going on in your life. If life's just passing you by and you're resenting the time and you're all stressed, whatever, life won't feel good. But materially, that scenario we described there, let's say it was 3 months ago when you were a bit more stressed, you maybe were on your phone, maybe had a couple of beers the night before. The version of you that showed up for your daughter then would have been a very, very different version, right? Materially, life was identical, and you might have gone, "It's so stressful, kid come in and interrupted me." Versus, what's the difference here? You went, "I've had the most wonderful morning, and I love that time." And so there's no real difference in actually what's happening in your life. It's your state and then how you can show up, right? And I think for me, that's it. And the beauty of that is puts you in the driving seat. You're the one in control, and it's kind of your choice as to how you want to show up. Now, there's work that's involved in doing that, right? And we can discuss what that looks like. But ultimately, it's on you. But that, for me, that's empowering.
yeah. The well, the main driver for me joining the 1% and reaching out to you was to be a better dad. And not that I felt like I was failing as a dad, but I was letting them control me, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. And I was reacting like a kid, way more than I should have done. And letting a 3-year-old's behaviour basically take over my reactions. And
yeah,
that, and you you kind of think, okay, well, what's the silver bullet for me to stop doing that? And it's not one thing. It isn't one thing. You need to be in a better place yourself to be able to cope with those situations in a better way. So it isn't just stop reacting or stop blaming other people or whatever it might be. It is a holistic. If you're feeling better about yourself, if you feel like you are present, if you feel like you've got more energy, if you feel healthy, if you feel good about yourself, all of that has given me the responses that I now have. I still fuck up, I still move my head, but I'd say probably probably kind of 20% of the amount that I used to, which, considering
It's a massive change. Is that exactly?
huge. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what that is life, right? No matter what, no one's perfect, no one's a robot, and we're never going to get this right all the time. But if you do the work on yourself to feel healthy or be healthy, be more mindful, balance your stress at work, feel like you're succeeding at work, but have boundaries, like all of that stuff, well, then that version of you that walks into the kitchen and one of the twins has thrown a ball of pasta at the wall that's smashed everywhere is probably going to laugh and clean it up versus the stressed out his head, work's going to be shit, on his phone, not done any exercise for 2 weeks, feeling a bit like flabby and not happy with himself, had a bit of a snipe at his missus because you weren't paying attention, and then one of the kids throws a pasta at the ball. What do you think you're going to do? Like,
Yeah.
and when you play out like that, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? But but by the way, it's really fucking annoying when kids do that. Just brass tacks.
Yeah.
But we're the adults, and so I think we want to show the kids that we're the adults, and so how you react is built on the things that you do. And hopefully, the more the things that you do to take care of yourself, to show up physically, mentally, emotionally, means that in those touch points where there is the ability for you to go one way or the other way, you hopefully choose the more virtuous option. But then even when we don't, which we don't, like we said, well, then you can, in that more objective, clearer mindset, you can calm down and go, hold up a second, didn't really shout myself in glory there. Well, here's an opportunity to show my wife or my kids how you reconcile when you fucked up. And that in itself is a learning, right? And so you can have this kind of constant sort of course correction, recognizing we're not perfect, we're all projects. But if we treat ourselves like that, recognize there's elements that I need to do for my own well-being, well, then I guess you're always kind of pointed at the right North Star versus where often guys are, and you were when we spoke, where you just feel like you're sort of going around in these negative feedback loops that you can't quite bust out of.
Yeah. Yeah. The mental capacity to be able to take stock in that moment rather than react and bite. That's one of the biggest changes. Yeah. And I think, there have been loads and loads of really positive aspects of going through the program, but that was the main driver. Like we when we first started. I've never been kind of overweight, but I've shed. Well, I'm the lightest I've ever been. Well, the lightest I can remember being today. So I've lost 7 kilos in what's it been 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I needed to lose weight, but I have, and I feel great for it.
Yeah, and the self-esteem that's tied into that, and that loops back to what we said at the start. Your body and what you do physically in your health has a bearing on your mind and how you show up. And for some reason, for a long time, those two things we talk about are like the silos, and they're not. And so when we spoke and we discussed this a few times, like you're like, I don't care about weight. I'm not really bothered about what I'm doing physically, and that's fine. Just so happens we've done some work on it, and you look and feel better. You're like, I quite like this.
Yeah.
But it's great for your self-esteem and how you show up. And so, of course, that's going to have an impact. Now, like we said, is that the only thing? And had you lost none of that, would you have made these changes still? Yes, you would. But it just feeds into all of it. And so you wake up, look at me, I'm looking good, a bit of a shoulders back, head up, chest out, Well, even that's going to have a bearing on other things. And then we haven't really talked about work, but if you're feeling like you're showing up as a good dad, you're looking and feeling sharper, you've got more energy, to think you're not going to perform better at work is crazy. Now, like I say, I have clients where I'll work with them in a kind of exec coaching capacity. Do you think I don't talk about all this stuff? I talk about all of it because I really, truly believe that, well, if some of those elements aren't being addressed, we can just look at work performance. But like your work performance was 100% going to improve if you're happier at home, you're more content. You've had that morning you just described with your daughter. To think then that oh God, I've got a difficult conversation with a client today, but you started your day off with some exercise, feeling good about yourself, a wonderful interaction with your daughter. Well, you're going to enter that day with a totally different mindset to rolling out of bed fucked tired. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the running your own business is you're on a treadmill, like consistently. Of right, okay, now I've got to get this done. It doesn't stop unless you stop it.
Proper commission only.
Yeah.
He's like,
and so being able to throw yourself into it, but then also have a point at which you go, okay, that's done for the day now. And you know, the things that I've added into my routine, exercise, meditation, you know, eating much healthier, and you know, all of that has made me sharper and more focused, without a shadow of a doubt. Which, you know, long term, although it, you know, you don't feel the impact necessarily every single day. Long term, that consistency and those habits that you've built, but just, you know, you cannot be better.
Yeah, yeah. And it's that cumulative impact of those things. And then again, just coming full circle, if you're feeling like that, more energized, focused, achieving more at work, when you walk through the door, you're going to feel happy at home because you had a good day, you know? So it
Yeah.
becomes like a positive feedback loop. So I don't want to cannibalize too much of your time, Rick, because just as we said, you're a very busy man. Before we get off, like, what would you say then, having done this work, gone through this journey yourself, from where you were to where you are today? And let's say anyone's listening and they're not sure, and I don't mean about working with me, but what's been your key kind of takeaway from having come through this to be in this sort of resilient, positive, you know, state that you're in right now? What's been the key learnings or takeaway?
So I don't know. I don't know if this is necessarily a learning or a takeaway, but I think the probably the biggest is the misconception that you don't have time. And I remember very vividly on a call with you probably 3 weeks ago, where I was like, I'm not gonna be a 5 a.m. wanker. I'm not 5 o'clock. And lo and behold, here I am getting up every morning at 5:30 to exercise. And that is now a habit. And it's the habits that you form that aren't a massive kind of, right, you must now do all of this, but it's the small incremental steps and habits that you form that change genuinely changes your life. Like, it changes your outlook, it changes how you feel about yourself. Um, and I think for me, sticking to those habits and being disciplined with it is the biggest takeaway, because I'm at the point now where, you know, I missed one of my workouts this week, and it's still bothering me. Still bothering me. I didn't do it. So understanding that those habits, the small habits, are kind of have an cumulative effect on you. Understanding that, and then kind of and then doing them. And I said it at the end of the blueprint when I left the blueprint, on one of the calls. I was like, just do the habits. Just do the habits every single day, and you'll get the result.
Yeah, I think the 2 points there, Rick. One is the time piece, right? And people think they don't have time. I think that speaks to that. They don't think they've got time to do the things they think they need to do, right? And this is where you get that rub, I think, of that. I hear it all the time. Basically, every call I ever have with a potential client, which is, I know what I need to do, I just don't do it. I'm like, okay. So I would challenge that you don't, because if you did, you'd do it. And so there's things that you think you need to do, and then you don't have time for that. So that's where you stop. So I can't. It's like, no. There's other variants and other ways we can do things, and so that's the first point. So there is time. It might not be the amount of time you think you need, and we can condense things to do that. But there's that, and then that feeds into the second point of, like, it's those small habitual behavioural elements. And again, I think our ego, I don't mean you, Rick, the royal you, goes, well, that's not a lot. It's like, yeah, but you're not doing it. So let's maybe try these small, tiny things that you can definitely commit to and do. Can you do that? Yes, of course I can. Okay. And then after a week, you go, I feel pretty good. So, yeah, you do. That's a surprise. Should we build on that? Okay. But I think when we're on our own, it's quite hard to see that or recognize that or even know. And that's where I go, well, and again, often I might hear from gents is like, I've kind of done half of this all before, but not in this way. And for me, it's about really lowering the bar, recognizing you are super busy. It is hectic. You are running a business. You have got young kids. None of that's not true. Therefore, nothing. No. Therefore, something. And it's recognizing there's something. And once you get that chink in that foot in the door, you start to be able to do it. Looping back to I'm never going to be a 5 a.m. wanker, Luke. Okay. I'll sit there and go, okay, fine. Let's see.
Yeah.
And then we joked about that like this week, I think, even, didn't we? I said, but that's because you've given yourself the grace to build these things up and feel about it and think about it and go, well, okay, the stage of my life now, given the structure that I put in, the habits that I built up, actually, it kind of works for me to get up a bit earlier. And will that be forever? Probably not. But at the stage of life I'm now with a business and young kids, that suits me now. And so it's kind of looking at things slightly differently, but ultimately that's kind of what sets you free. So it's been great to see.
Yeah, and it's that kind of, sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it's 45 minutes. If I'm lucky, it's an hour. That first hour of the day is like is golden now. That's like, that's me doing a workout or going for a run, meditating, and then starting my day. And that's it's just a huge benefit. Like I don't feel guilty about doing it. I used to be guilty for going out for a run if my wife's at home with the twins, because if I've got an hour spare, surely I should be out there. So yeah, that's been a huge shift, and I wouldn't I'd advocate that 100%.
I'll end on a little wanky phrase, which is like self-care isn't selfish, because ultimately, if you want to be your best for everybody else, if you're on the floor, well, you're not going to help anyone, right? And it's not about, well, I can't do a 3-hour bike ride every weekend because I'm in cycling. No, you can't. So why the fuck are you even trying? I was about 20 push-ups first thing in the morning. All right. You know what I mean? There we go. And let's go from there. So I think that it's that attitude. When you show yourself, you can do that, and we build from there. Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting. Like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you for taking the time to talk. I love this chat. I got lots out of it. I know other gents who are listening definitely will as well. And also for transparency, we're still working together, and I'm really excited about what we continue to build on, and we're going to be on that journey. If anyone is listening or watching, they're interested in having a chat with me about kind of what we discussed and see how I can help with what I do within the 1%, drop me a note, a DM or a note in the comments. Otherwise, if anyone is watching and they're like feeling like Rick was describing and they're not sure, all I would say is there is definitely something you can do about it. And it's not about big, shiny, life-sweeping changes. It's about small incremental steps and just recognizing and admitting that if you think you've got a problem and something's not working, you've got a problem and something's not working. And that's the first step. And once you own up to that fact, then you can make some changes, and they don't need to be big or scary. And Rick's a prime example of that. So, Rick, thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure. We will see you all next week. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.